Report Veterans Only is a national television news magazine for America's veterans and a presentation of Veterans Productions USA. Reporting for Veterans Only is Brian Patrick.
The Defense Department is sending more aircraft and warships to the battlefront. This war is against drugs, and the hot spot is the waters between Cuba and Florida. Reporter Mike Victor and photographer Todd Shutter recently returned from a patrol with the Coast Guard out of Key West, Florida, to bring us a close-up look at these policemen of the high seas. It is because of those seas the pictures are a bit shakier than normal, but you'll see that weather is one of the many hazards these servicemen will face.
Peaceful and pristine, the clear waters off Key West resemble anything but a battlefront. Not so. This is the arena of the war on drugs. For years, smugglers have imported tons of marijuana and more recently tons of cocaine into America through the Keys. The geography of the area, thousands of small islands, provide the perfect setting for the drug trade. Planes from South America make airdrops at pre-assigned and secluded locations, and the drug flow continues by water as well.
From Jamaica in sailboats and yachts inside the Cuban territorial sea until they get somewhere over it here around Havana, and then they make a run for it, either up into the Fort Myers, Tampa, St. Pete area, or on up into the Keys and maybe follow up Hawks Channel with legitimate traffic into Miami.
Coast Guard Group Key West has an immense task, 52,000 square miles of water, up the Atlantic coast to Group Miami and up the Gulf Coast to Group St. Pete, out to the Bahamas and down to Cuba. With two supporting bases at Marathon and Isla Morada, they have been scoring big.
During fiscal year '89, Group Key West here got 3 of the 10 biggest marijuana seizures that the Coast Guard got in the country, including the very largest, which was 55,000 pounds on the motor vessel S.O. Bonaire. Our leadette people got from a Navy platform. We also got 5 of the 10 largest cocaine seizures, including the largest one on the motor vessel Barlavento by the Coast Guard cutter Shearwater.
The 41-foot cutter is still the Coast Guard standard for patrols, but much of the success has come by way of the 110-foot Island class and Seabird class cutters. Additional help is provided by the 300-foot Thetis and Navy vessels equipped with mobile aerostat balloons, which increase radar surveillance up to 50 miles. Our weekend patrol with the Coast Guard would be aboard the cutter Seahawk.
This particular vessel is pretty much solely a law enforcement platform. We do all missions, military readiness, search and rescue. We've done a marine environmental response mission, watching after a freighter that had run aground that was a potential oil spill. We've done that mission since I've been aboard here. We can do them all, but the primary purpose of this platform is, of course, law enforcement most of the time. And we deploy on any patrol. That's normally what we're looking to do.
In its 5-year history, Seahawk has pulled in a lot of contraband, 33 major busts. Similar records by other ships in the group have shifted a lot of the drug traffic into more westerly routes. Piloting the cutter is the executive officer, Senior Chief Martin Norris. He says one reason that patrols have been successful is the unique design of the ship.
It's a catamaran design, which means it has 2 hulls, and we have actual seals or bladders that go under the stern and the bow of the boat, and we lift up out of the water. We don't come completely to the surface, but we do displace. It makes the boat a little bit faster, makes it very stable in certain seas, which makes it a more ideal platform because it's easier to work from.
Coast Guard cutter, Seahawk, this is the Key West group, stand by.
Navigators continue to man the charts, taking them safely through the Keys and the reefs. They're following a planned course toward a suspect area, then the plans change.
Our original intention was, when we departed Key West, was to go out to Cay-Sal Bank and conduct a routine patrol. But like many times when we depart on a patrol, plans change very quickly. And we've just gotten information that there's a possible vessel of interest out by Dry Tortugas that may have contraband aboard. So instead of going southeast like we originally intended to, we're going to go in the opposite direction, northwest.
Since there are more than 70,000 boats registered in the Keys alone, finding the smuggler's boat is far from easy. Surface search radar is the prime tool, detecting boats at 6 miles and tankers at 24 miles. Direction is corrected with both gyro and magnetic compasses, while a computer helps monitor the 4 huge engines, 2 for lift and 2 for speed. High-frequency and ultra-high-frequency radio channels are alternated and protected to keep the element of surprise. The new course took the ship 100 miles west of Key West and well into the night. Soon, radar showed the suspect vessel. The size and location matched that of the reported craft. As the moon swayed through the cutter's mast, the guardsmen became policemen. All are graduates of the Maritime Law Enforcement Academy. Their cruiser is an RHI, a rigid-hulled inflatable with a good reputation in high seas.
With this type of vessel, he has a real high freeboard, so it's a little bit more difficult to get aboard than some of the other types of fishing vessels. This is a long-lining fishing vessel. It's different than, say, a lobster-type fishing vessel. You're running about a 3 to 5 foot swell out here, so the timing is very important as far as the coxswain, the driver of the small boat, getting the boat alongside. So I would say we're just about at the maximum safe state for doing a boarding.
The boarding party first checks for dangers aboard, fuel leaks or fires. Then all crew members are mustered forward.
Boarding team safely aboard. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to look at their documentation, make sure that the vessel has the proper papers, and we're going to take a look at their catch to see what they're fishing for.
Since the Coast Guard also enforces fishing laws in the U.S. economic zone, the catch is examined. So is every other part of the boat in search of drugs. The craft's outside dimensions are compared with inside measurements in search of secret compartments.
The original sighting came from a Navy aircraft that was flying in support of Coast Guard drug interdiction mission. And he found this guy in an area that we usually don't find that many fishing vessels around. When we first came up on him, he answered most of the questions in a normal manner, so that wasn't really suspicious. But he doesn't have a lot of fishing gear on board, and fishing vessel to be out here in this location and where he is and not actively involved in fishing is a little suspicious to us.
The members of the boarding party face unknown dangers every time they board.
Over the last several years, there's been over 150 assaults on Coast Guard boarding officers. Some of them from as simple a thing and as being pushed or shoved or punched, but we've had some gun firing incidents and some stabbings and cuttings and that kind of thing too. So yeah, we've been taking it serious for a long time.
Besides high seas, this boarding presented no dangers and no drugs. But returning to the mothership, these young men know that every operation can present new challenges.
You never know what you're going to run into. It's a very, very dangerous job. It's not like a police officer where he can take off and get away. We're out in the middle of the ocean. The only out or exit for us is to jump overboard. We're basically sitting ducks out there, and I've never run into any problems so far as a boarding team member.
Aboard ship, there are few amenities. Efforts are made to prepare fresh, hot meals when possible. Movies are issued 1 per day at sea to lighten up the scarce time off duty. And yes, we experienced a night in the rack and found it to be exactly that. Morning dawn, bright above more quieted seas. Seahawk is in pursuit of 2 boats believed to have rendezvoused in a suspicious area. Guardsmen, once again, become cops. The Coast Guard does not board vessels at random or just to keep busy. Boarded vessels such as this one must fit a certain profile. There's no fishing activity going on. It's sitting dead in the water in an area known for airdrops. Planes from South America drop their loads of drugs to boats this size to be ferried into Florida. So the Coast Guard boarding team will take a close-up look. The Coast Guard can board a U.S. vessel anywhere except in the territorial sea of another country. They can board a foreign vessel in U.S. territorial seas, and any other vessel on the high seas can be boarded by either captain's consent or approval by the flagged country. To Sue McDonald, on board only 2 weeks, it all means a better chance for the next generation.
I think it's important, because I think right now that's the main mission of the whole Coast Guard. It's just to, stop the drugs, even though it might be a small piece. You know, every time you go out there and you hear about it, that's just some less that's going into schools and, you know, people's veins and whatnot.
The Navy's P-3 Orion touches base with a cutter on a surface search and surveillance mission. Its radar eyes see more than 60 miles. The boarding party gave up the search. No drugs on board. But several were heard to say they think they arrived just a bit early. More solid intelligence has become an objective.
All the agencies agree that we need better intelligence. We need to have a better database of exactly who and when the vessels are trafficking and bringing marijuana, cocaine, substances into the U.S. If we had better intelligence, it would help a lot.
All intelligence gathered from water and air is funneled through Group Key West operations.
8-4, Charlie Echo.
Here, the efforts of all ships and 300 men are managed. Some are assigned to intercept illegal immigrants. This young Cuban actually windsurfed to the Keys. The group's main function is still search and rescue if life or property is threatened. However, most of the new attention is going to law enforcement. Commanding the group, Captain Scobie echoes the call of his skippers at sea for improved intelligence.
The area that probably would be most productive would be better intelligence, because it's unlikely that we're going to get a lot of people and a lot of equipment, whether it's boats or special gear. But if we have better intelligence, that means we can use our resources more wisely.
They're better funded than we are. You know, I mean, their money is, you know, it's not a big deal to them. They can jack the price up to cover their product on the street and cover any increases in overhead. So I think we need more patrol boats and more people down here to ensure that they don't find an easy route into the United States.
The Coast Guard is starting to see help from Washington now that the Defense Department sees the drug war as a national security interest.
The Department of Defense are not allowed to do boardings. The Coast Guard is. We put our team on a Navy ship, they get us to the right place, and then we can do the boardings from a Navy ship. Very effective program in that now all the druggies have to worry about every Navy ship, whether it's got a Coast Guard detachment on board, and they have to avoid all of them. So it's whether we have somebody on there or not, it's a concern for them.
We have the newly formed Joint Task Force 4 here in Key West, and they've been tremendous in getting a lot of assets in place fairly quickly that accomplish what we call the detection and monitoring phase of the drug mission. That is, they'll go out and detect vessels for us and monitor them until we can get on scene. And that's exactly what happened last night. The JTF-4 aircraft found that vessel for us and was able to keep it on radar until we got on scene.
The skipper decided on a port call at Fort Jefferson in the Dry Tortugas. The huge fort was the largest link in America's coastal defense system in the 1800s. Its guns were never fired. Now it stands as a monument to defense in an area filled with nature's beauty. Then, back at sea, heading for Port Key West, the skipper is asked to intercept a fishing vessel pulling a larger boat. Seahawk is brought up to high gear, monitored closely by an alert mechanic.
If the engines don't run, we can't get them to the boat to board it, to stop the drugs.
Roger, Captain. Is there anybody on board the other vessel?
Yeah, there's 2 people aboard the other vessel. Over.
The boarding party is called to task one more time. The lead vessel was found clean, but the measurements on the second came up a foot short. Closer survey revealed a secret compartment, which is illegal. The compartment turned up empty, however, a records check did not. The boat was supposed to be in custody of U.S. Customs. So as Seahawk returned to port, so did the mystery craft, handcuffed to a 41-foot Coast Guard cutter. On this patrol, the drug search did come up empty-handed. During the 30 hours we spent at sea, the Coast Guard says tens of millions of dollars worth of illegal drugs were safely imported into the United States. To stop that flow, it will take many more men, ships, and improved intelligence. However, law enforcement is only part of the story. As long as America's appetite for illegal drugs remains high, there will be smugglers willing to take the gamble, because right now, the dice are still falling in their favor. In Key West, Florida, Mike Victor reporting for Veterans Only.
For those of you living near Louisville, Kentucky, we'd like to tell you about a special art exhibit featuring the works of Vietnam veterans. Called Vietnam, Reflexes and Reflections, the show will be exhibited at the galleries of the Louisville Visual Art Association, in the main library, and at the Water Tower, now through April 13th. For more information on this art exhibit, call 502-896-2146. That's 502-896-2146. There is a lot at stake as the different veteran service organizations take their turn before a joint session of the House and Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. Mary Miller is on Capitol Hill covering these important hearings.
Of all the concerns veterans have these days, none is bigger than this. A VA task force currently reevaluating the whole benefits area. The VA has said it's simply looking into ways to correct inequities, not reduce benefits or explicitly save money, though admitting if there were savings, they'd be plowed back into health care, and that any change would affect only future benefits. But the Paralyzed Veterans of America, for one, just isn't buying that.
The benefit reforms being proposed by the department to make major changes in the provisions of compensation for service-connected disabilities represents, in our opinion, one of the most malevolent and misguided attacks in decades on the framework of veterans' benefits and services. The Department of Veterans Affairs is proposing to change the future structure of that system, calling the actions of the Congress in the past inequitable and irrational. The changes, however, if enacted, would create more inequities than they could ever hope to avoid. The proposals are crafted to give a little, but take a lot. First, the department states that no current beneficiary would be affected. Banking on selfishness, they think they can safely assume that a veteran currently receiving compensation isn't going to get too concerned so long as his comp check is not being taken away, but compensation for some unknown disabled veteran in the future. In reality, Mr. Chairman, this doesn't solve an inequity. It creates an even greater one. The additional sweetener to the deal calls for the department to plow any savings realized by their so-called reforms back into the system to improve health care services and benefits for other eligible veterans. In other words, they want to deny one veteran a benefit, but promise to give over the compensation check he would have received to help pay for services for another veteran who might somehow be considered more deserving. This will never happen. You know, and I know, Mr. Chairman, that the savings, indeed if there are any, will go right out the window to pay for someone else's deficit, to pay for tax breaks for the rich, or foreign aid to countries we once fought and where many died, helping to make those nations prosperous and free. We do not oppose efficiency and equity in the provision of veterans' benefits. We are taxpayers too. We have paid the price of citizenship, and we continue to pay that price. But we do oppose efficiency and equity when they are used as buzzwords, thinly veiling the true desire to deny eligible veterans the benefits they have earned and which they deserve.
The testimony brought swift committee support.
I will not stand by and see any benefits torn down, taken away from the veterans, those benefits which they have so deservedly earned. And I think that with the proper fight, we will see that that will not happen.
We always share those concerns with you, and you know quite well that we'll work with you. If that is our mutual conclusion that something mischievous is afoot, we'll do what we can to rectify it.
Too often we look to the veterans budget to make savings, and the fact is that there are too many issues that the veterans are facing today in our nation that simply want to be swept under the rugs.
The VA Benefits Task Force, headed by Deputy Secretary Tony Principi, is at the top of the Blinded Veterans Association's list of concerns, too.
We deplore the manner in which the Principi Task Force was started, its secret process, its intent, and its failure to include the Veterans Organization in its deliberations. Although the VA states that the study is designed to remove inconsistencies and inequities in the health care and benefits programs, we strongly believe that it is designed to reduce the budget at the expense of today's and tomorrow's veterans.
The BVA also wants 43 additional full-time equivalent employees, or FTEs, for its rehabilitation centers.
A small percentile of cut on 192,000 people who still remain employed as FTE in the system doesn't seem like much, but when you translate that to tiny specialized systems like our own, it ends up manifesting in lack in terms of the ability to handle quantity of blinded veterans for rehabilitation and the quality of the rehabilitation. Because of diminished resources, we now have the centers operating at way below maximum capacity, and I'm sorry to give you the unconscionable figure of close to 900 eligible blinded veterans waiting in line for blind rehabilitation.
The Military Order of the Purple Heart is most concerned about the health care provided in the VA medical centers.
Veterans' wives have had to personally clean the patient and clean the rooms due to the shortage of VAMC staff as a result of the FTE reduction. Additionally, service-connected veterans rated 50% or more have been denied admission in emergency situations. Veterans have not been able to get in needed prosthetics in a timely manner, nor have veterans been able to get over-the-counter drugs. Meanwhile, the DVA is purchasing cheaper and/or inferior supplies. Are you aware that every day these veterans, the combat wounded, are denied treatment by the DVA because they can only be treated for a service-connected condition? Some of the veterans, men and women, have 2 or 3 Purple Hearts, but are only rated by the DVA for scars. So even though they are Category A, they can only be treated for those scars. Why do you say to the Purple Heart recipients when they see a Category A, non-service connected wartime veteran who was never overseas, never bore the brunt of battle, receiving treatment for most medical conditions while their eligibility is restricted? What has happened to the priority of the combat wounded? The Military Order of the Purple Heart is deeply concerned about the erosion of veterans' benefits and entitlements. The country called us heroes, yet many combat wounded veterans seem to get the impression that they are treated as welfare cases rather than veterans who fought to preserve the freedom of this nation.
Better health care topped the Jewish war veterans' agenda, too.
While we are grateful to have one of the best proposals from the administration in several years, it appears that there will be a very little real increase in the funds needed to run the Department of Veterans Affairs. As you know, many of our VA medical centers are 30 to 40 years old and need renovation. Medical equipment needs replacing, and staffing shortages are critical. Many veterans do not have access to outpatient treatment.
And the JWV says there ought to be more money for health care, so lower priority, so-called Category B and C veterans can be included too.
And why penalize a man or a woman who gave anywhere from 1 to 4 years of his life during wartime, was fortunate enough to come back without being hurt or maimed, etc.? Why make him a second-class citizen? The VA should be open to all veterans from all wars at all times with no restrictions whatsoever. He shouldn't have to be at a poverty level to get in.
The cry for better health care was echoed by the ex-prisoners of wars as well.
They need the care today for tomorrow, may be too late for many. I recognize the costs involved, but when the need arose to bail out the savings and loans, funds were made available. So today our country is infested with drugs. Funds needed to fight that problem are there. We had funds to bail out the Chrysler Corporation. No need for funds to support the Panama liberation when it came to debate. Yet, We can't justify oftentimes an extra dollar for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Why? What we need now is to pinch our pocketbooks in order to increase the funds for the DVA. Although painful as it may seem, it does not hurt as much as the suffering many veterans go through today. We are not asking for bonuses, huge compensations, or lavish treatment. Just the minimal care to relieve the pain.
Today's testimony was forceful and often emotional. It was unfortunate by the end of the morning no one was left to hear it, but a single committee member. The Senate is out of session. House members had scheduling conflicts. But lawmakers have always insisted they review the written testimony and take veterans' concerns to heart. In Washington, I'm Mary Miller for Veterans Only.
Next week on For Veterans Only, physically challenged athletes compete for the U.S. Disabled Ski Championships. And we'll meet the teenage son of a Vietnam-era veteran who is competing at the highest levels despite his ongoing battle with cancer. I'm Brian Patrick. Thanks for being with us. We hope you'll join us next time on For Veterans Only.
Share For Veterans Only with your friends and other veterans. A VHS copy of this week's program is available for $24.95, including postage and handling. To order your copy of For Veterans Only, call toll-free 1-800-874-VETS. That's 1-800-874-VETS. You can charge your order on Visa or MasterCard, or you can pay by check or money order. To get For Veterans Only on VHS, call now 1-800-874-VETS.
This program is made possible by the Disabled American Veterans, a non-profit service organization of over 1 million wartime disabled veterans. By the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. VFW means Service to America's Veterans. By PVA, the Paralyzed Veterans of America, and PVA Sports, working for the best. And by Galaxy Tours, a world leader for national and international group travel. The producers thank this station and other public television stations for their assistance in making this program available. For Veterans Only is also telecast by the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service for the benefit of the men and women serving on active duty in our armed forces, at home and abroad.